What's up, PGF Nation? Everyone is doing mock drafts right now, but we're not here to tell you what will happen. We're here to tell you what we think each team should do, and we're going to go through the top 10 picks in this NFL draft. We're going to break down what every team should do with these picks if they want to get it right. Best player, best value, and the best part, we're not going to agree on all of this. There's a few of these picks here where we see it completely different. So this should be a fun discussion, guys. I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. Alex, let's kick this off. Who's on the clock?
We could, like I said, I don't really talk about the Raiders too much because they're going to go Fernando Mendoza hands down. That's where they're going with the first overall pick.
Well, but here's the thing. Is there any discussion to be had before we get into these? Because we know that's the pick, but like we said, this isn't a mock draft. This is what they should do. Mm-hmm. Is there any reason that you can think of where the Raiders shouldn't take Mendoza? And the reason I bring that up is let's hypothetically say a team like the Jets at 2 who has a ton of draft capital. Let's say, and this isn't going to happen, but just for fun, let's say that they say, hey, you can move back to the second pick and we'll give you our other first round pick, a future first round pick, whatever it is, right? They throw a war chest of picks at you guys, which they could do. And they say, look, you trade back, you still get the number 2 pick and all these other picks, and we take the first overall pick to grab Mendoza. Is there any, if you're the Raiders, would you entertain that?
And I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no is even though, let's just say I get a top 5 pick next year, it doesn't have to be number 1. I could get a top 5 pick.
Right.
I'm still going to say no. One, because to me, there's not a Caleb Williams next year. I knew Caleb Williams was going to be number 1 next year. I don't know that about any of those quarterbacks. That's number 1. Number 2, I've seen everything I need to see from Fernando in terms of what he can bring to this organization, how he can flip the nature of the organization. Again, he's not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen like that. He's, like as we said, between Matt Ryan and Andy Dalton, however you want to look at him, wherever you want to look at him, and say this is a mature adult that can control the room and say the right things. I'm going to forego those picks from the Jets or even Miami because they got a lot of picks too. I'm going to forego the picks from those teams, and I'm going to stick true to what I have in Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's fascinating to think about because I do think the Jets are one of those teams that actually could make it interesting if they were absolutely in love with Mendoza. They actually have enough draft picks, and like I said, you would only have to jump back to the second pick, so you would still get a high-end player in this draft. And then have a bunch of resources to kind of rebuild this roster with. It would be intriguing. I think I would at least take the phone call if I'm the ownership group with the Raiders. But I'm with you. I don't take that move, even if they tried to unload a bunch of picks, for the simple reason that, like you said, next year's class should be good as far as quarterbacks, right? It should be loaded. It should have a bunch of guys to pick from. However, going into last college football season, we thought this draft was going to be loaded with quarterbacks. We thought this quarterback class was going to have Meyer and Cade Klubnik and Drew Aller and all these guys were all going to be first rounders. Well, it turned out it wasn't. It was the exact opposite. So even though next year looks great, we have no idea how it's going to play out. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm not risking that, like you said, for, let's say, a top 5 pick, and then all of a sudden it's another quarterback class that doesn't look very strong, and you're sitting there another year into your rebuild without a quarterback. I'm with you. You got to take the guy when you got the chance. Let's get to the Jets, though, because I think the draft in a lot of ways kind of starts with New York, although Arizona is interesting, and we'll get to them in a second. What should the Jets do? We know what all the mock drafts are saying. I know what my mock draft says. What do the Jets do? What would you do if you're running the Jets here with the number 2 pick?
So I'm stacked with a lot of picks right now between this year and next year. Nobody wants to trade up to number 2, so you have to make a pick here. And all the mocks basically say the same players, the same 2 players, David Bailey and Arvell Reese. This is where me and you differ in terms of who they should pick. You're going to say Arvell Reese, and I'm going to say David Bailey. Just to keep it short and sweet, David Bailey just has more years of what he can do, and Arvell Reese has shown what he can do. And that's the real difference here in terms of what I see in terms of those 2 players.
Yeah, no, and I think there's a lot of truth to that between these 2 guys, because I think David Bailey is probably the quote-unquote safer pick at number 2, right? Like, David Bailey, if you just want to step up to the plate and hit a double, David Bailey's probably the guy. But if you want to swing for the fence with the most upside of any guy in this draft, a guy who, if he becomes the player that a lot of people think he can, is probably 5 years from now the best player in this class, then you go with a guy like Arvell Reese. It's interesting because I think when you look at the Jets, they've got a lot of needs. Like, this is a team, if you just want to talk about the needs and different spots to fill, you could look at the D-line, you could look at the interior of the offensive line, you could look, obviously quarterback's a big need, but there's no one there. You know, they need another wide receiver, they need safety help. There's so many holes. So I think for the Jets, it kind of becomes simple. D-line, pass rusher is a need, and you have your choice of guys at the top of the class. So I think the mocks have it right here when it comes to the David Bailey, Arvell Reese thing. On my big board, I have Arvell Reese as the number one player in this draft. He would be the no-brainer pick for me. And I like David Bailey, but I actually have David Bailey as my 7th ranked player in this class. I don't think he's a blue chip prospect. I think he's actually a little overrated. There's actually a handful of defenders and a couple offensive guys too that I would put in front of him on the draft board. So David Bailey would definitely not be the pick for me, even though I think he's a good player and it's a safe pick.
Let me ask you real quick. Do you have Bain over him in your
No,
oh, okay.
Absolutely not.
I'm just making sure.
I'll tell you where I have Bain. We'll just get there real quick, and not to get off subject here. Bain is my 25th ranked player. And the reason why, if you guys haven't, go back and listen to our boom or bust prospects episode if you guys haven't already. Bain was one of the highlight players on the boom or bust list because the guy is an incredible game record. And we know he plays with tenacity. He's tough. There's just too many question marks about the body type and if he's really suited to play on the edge, which I don't think he is. So then at that point, can you kick him inside and be a 3-tech? Maybe. Or does he just fall into that tweener category where he's not really an edge, he's not really a D tackle, and he kind of ends up in no man's land in the NFL? I've got David Bailey at 7. Very good player. I'm just a little lower on him than some other analysts. And the main reason why is because I think he's a really good pass rusher. He's got some real liabilities as a run defender. And I don't know if I feel good taking with the number 2 pick, a guy who really just rushes the passer. Like, I'm looking for a guy who's a more complete football player if I'm taking you with the number 2 picks. Let's get to the 3rd overall pick, Alex, because I think the Cardinals, in a lot of ways, because like we talked about, we kind of know what direction the Jets are going to go. And we both agree they should go in one of those 2 directions, even though we disagree on the player, right? It should be one of those 2 guys. So at 3, I think it gets really, really interesting, Alex, because I think in a lot of ways the draft kind of starts at 3. What direction do the Cardinals go? Because where they go and where they should go are 2 different things. They obviously have a need at tackle, which might be their most glaring hole, but do you take a tackle at 3 here? Because there is no Joe Alt. There is no Penei Sewell, right? There's no guy like that in this class that you just run the card up to the podium and say, no doubt, no brainer, we need a tackle. Here's the guy. There isn't a guy like that in this class. So that makes this pick really, really interesting for the Cardinals. Now, there's other directions they can go. This team has a lot of holes. Maybe they go to the defensive side. Maybe they go Jeremiah Love. I don't think, but once again, this isn't about what they're going to do. What should they do at 3, Alex? Quick shout out to our friends at Props.Cash, the best player prop research tool in the game. Props.Cash lets you scan thousands of props across sports books to quickly spot the highest value opportunities. You get real-time injury and lineup intel, advanced filters to find exactly what you're looking for, and even correlated player props so you can see what tends to hit when a player goes over their line. They cover NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, college basketball, and the WNBA. It's legit next level prep. If you're serious about betting smarter, go to Props.Cash and use code PGF25 for 25% off your first month. That's code PGF25 for 25% off your first month at Props.Cash. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount.
There's two places they can go. They either take David Bailey or Reese or whoever's there from who the Jets don't take, or they take Love. And in this instance, I would more than likely take Love right here.
See, and that's what's interesting, right? Because there's the whole positional value argument, right? And there's a lot of people like, how can you take a running back this early and this and that? Well, look, this class is fascinating. This draft class, if you look at the top, 5 to 10 players in this draft, the blue chip guys, for one, there's not a whole lot of them. And the ones that are blue chip guys are not at quote unquote premium positions. The best players in this draft are basically a safety, an off-ball linebacker, a running back. Usually these aren't positions that get taken in the top 5 or even discussed in the top 5 picks. But with that being said, if you're the Cardinals, you have all these holes: right tackle, quarterback, obviously, but you don't there's no way you're taking a quarterback there. I think they have holes on the defensive line, like you said. So maybe you go with one of the guys that's left over from the Bailey Reese conversation. Can you go Francis Maui-Noah at right tackle there? I mean, maybe, but it kind of feels like a reach. I'm with you. Maybe you just say, look, let's just take the best player on the board. So if I'm looking at my big board, Jeremiah Love's my number 3 overall prospect. So really the only player, because I think Reese is probably gone. If Reese is there, you take Reese. If he's gone, the only guy I would put ahead of Jeremiah Love in this class is Sonny Styles. So I can make a case for Sonny Styles. You can make a debate he's the best defender in this class. So what about Sonny Styles at 3?
Yeah, I can't. Not over Jeremiah Love. I can't do that over Jeremiah Love. I have to pay attention to my offense because I'm getting ready for my quarterback next year. So I'm going to take Jeremiah Love, team him up once again with another running back that they have, Tyler Algiers, and they still have James Conner there as well as Trey Benson, but they don't have a quarterback. They have Gardner Minshew and Jacoby Brissett. So I'm going to have to bear down and run the ball. That's what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to go 65-45 and I'm going to run the ball.
The Cardinals are a team that a lot of people are talking about possibly trading out of this pick. And I think this is a team that probably wants to trade back. I've heard a lot of rumors that this is the team to circle. They're the most interested in possibly trading back. I think for the right offer, they trade back and get more picks because they do have holes. And I don't think there's an ideal fit here for them at 3. Jeremiah Love makes sense. I think it makes more sense, though, if with their second pick, they take Ty Simpson. And now you've got your young quarterback and your young running back combo there. But if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I'm getting on the phone with the Dallas Cowboys because the Dallas Cowboys at 12 are in a really interesting spot. Will they be able to get a good player at 12? Yes, but there's a very, very good chance that by the time 12 comes up, all the blue chip guys are gone. And they're kind of sitting there and the music stops and they don't have a chair. It's not that they can't get a good player, but I don't think they're going to get one of these top end players at 12. So if you're the Cowboys, do you trade up with the Cardinals? What about trading out of that spot and going back to 12? Because at 12, you probably get Francis Maui-Noah. And at 12, Francis Maui-Noah kind of makes sense because now you're getting him closer to where his actual value is. And maybe you get an additional pick from Dallas as well. So now you've got some extra draft capital. And this allows the Cowboys to move up from 12 and get in front of the Giants, who are in their division now with 2 top 10 picks, the Commanders, who are also in their division picking at 7. So you get in front of some of your rivals and you take one of the best players on the board, possibly an Arvell Reese, right? So let's say Bailey goes to, like you said, to the Jets. Arvell Reese is sitting there. What's the number one thing Dallas needs on that defense is an elite pass rushing, big time difference maker up front. Arvell Reese could give you some serious juice. And basically now you've just replaced Micah Parsons with possibly the next Micah Parsons in Dallas.
Yeah, I don't think Dallas moves in this draft, especially up. Well, let me not say I don't think they move. I don't think they move up because they don't have a second round pick. They only have a third round pick. To go from 12 up to 3, they'd have to give up that second pick in the first round, and then they'd have to give up more than likely a 2027 pick because they'll trade next year's third round pick as well. So I don't think Dallas moves anywhere in this draft. I don't think they move up to 3. I don't think they move up to 6. I don't think they trade up at all. It's not in their wheelhouse. They rarely ever trade up in any draft for the most part. They usually stand pat or they move down, but they never trade up in the draft.
But remember, it's not what we think they'll do. It's what they should do.
Right? Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because I'm not giving up any 2027 picks, and I'm not moving up. I'm not going to move up in the draft. I'm going to stand pat where I am. I'm going to stand pat where I am, and I'm going to take the best player available.
Yeah, for the record, I wouldn't do it either. They just don't have the draft capital to probably pull that off. I do think the Arizona Cardinals, though, as far as what they should be doing, I think they should be trying to find a partner to trade back with. I think 3 is just a terrible spot for them in this draft. And so if I'm them, I'm looking to trade out of that spot. That leaves the Tennessee Titans at 4. What should the Titans be looking to do at 4?
I'm going to go with they should take an offensive tackle. Even though I don't believe in them, they would believe in them. So I'm going to take Fano. I guess I'll take Fano. I was going to say Fano Magiola, but I'll take Fano.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not taking a tackle here. Once again, if I pull up my big board, let me see. My first offensive tackle, I don't have ranked until number 9. I don't think I can justify taking a tackle here because even then, my 9th ranked tackle is Monroe Freeling, and he's a project.
Yeah.
So even then, I feel like that's a huge reach at 4. So I'm not going tackle there at 4. If I'm the Titans, I think Sonny Styles would make sense here. They could absolutely use a dynamic player in the middle of that defense. I could see a guy like Robert Saleh looking at him and the way he runs his defense and being like, look, this could be my Fred Warner. I think Jeremiah Love makes a lot of sense. But you know what? I just talked myself into it. I think the pick here has to be Sonny Styles. I think Sonny Styles is the second best player in this draft. And I think getting the second best player here, if he was on the board, I think he would have to be the guy. I think Jeremiah Love makes a lot of sense because you've got your young quarterback going into year 2. I think adding a dynamic running back to take some of the pressure off of him makes a lot of sense. So Jeremiah Love would definitely be in the discussion for me. But I think at 4, it really comes down to those 2 players. But for me, I'm going to say Sonny Styles because I have a higher grade on Styles. Giants at 5. The Dexter Lawrence trade, which we'll kind of get to here in a minute, because obviously that just became the 10th overall pick now as well. So now the Giants having the 5 pick and the 10 pick in the top 10 is really fascinating. But Giants at 5 here with the trade of Lawrence, it leaves a pretty big hole in the middle of that defense. The problem is there's no defensive tackle even remotely worthy of going this high in this draft. So any D tackle pick here just doesn't make any sense at all, even though I think that's absolutely a position of need. They absolutely need a wide receiver. I think they're pretty light outside of Malik Neighbors. They could definitely use someone on the outside. So wide receiver, I think, makes a lot of sense. I think interior offensive line is clearly a hole. You want to protect this kid. I think you're going to have to find some guys in the middle of that offensive line. But once again, not sure it makes much sense taking a guard that early. However, there's a guy on my board that's higher than anybody else would ever imagine. And I've got Vega Ione, the guard from Penn State, as the 5th best prospect in this class. And when I do my big board, I don't put positional value into my rankings. So just so people understand, when I rank players, I rank players strictly based on who I think the best players in the draft are, regardless of what position they are. So taking a guard there would be crazy, and we know it's not going to happen. But look, if you're filling a hole with the best offensive lineman in this class, hands down, Vega Ione makes a lot of sense. Now, it's not going to happen, but if we're doing what should happen or what they should do, it's probably the safest pick they can make. and it would fill a hole for them immediately.
So with that pick, I'm going to take Carnell Tate. One, solid receiver. I don't think he's going to be a Jackson Smith and Jigba or anything like that. I think he'll give you 900 to maybe 1,100 yards receiving every single year and about 6 to 8 touchdowns, which I'm fine with. But I also heard on my back end, I heard another team that possibly would take Carnell Tate 2 picks later in the Commanders. So I would take Carnell Tate here.
Yeah, so it makes sense going, wide receivers definitely a need for them. I think I'm probably waiting for the 10th pick to go receiver though. And when I look at the receivers, I've got Mekhi Lemon ahead of Carnell Tate. So I have them ranked number 10 and number 11 on my big board. But with that being said, I think in this draft, once again, if Sonny Styles is still on the board here, I think he's a no-brainer pick for them at this point.
I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to take Sonny Styles. I hear you keep saying about Sonny Styles. They're not taking Sonny Styles. They went and got a guy. They signed Tremaine Edmonds. They're not taking Sonny Styles. I hear it all the time. They're not taking Sonny Styles. They went and got rid of a solid linebacker they had in Ben Okokere. They got rid of him so they could sign Tremaine Edmonds. So Sonny Styles is not in there, is not on their board whatsoever.
Well, but
they would take.
It's not what they will do. It's what they should.
Right, but what they should do, because they already have a middle linebacker, is they should take Carnell Tate because they already have the guy in that middle. And I know they play a 3-4 and they usually take 2 linebackers, but they have him and they have Micah McFadden, who they say is going to step up. But I would take Carnell Tate here simply because I don't think he'll be there at 10, because I think the Commanders. I believe let me say it this way. I believe the Commanders would take him at 7 and he wouldn't be there. And he could take it. They could take him at 7 or New Orleans could take him at 8. So I don't think Carnell Tate would be there, even though we don't feel the receivers are ranked as high as they should be. I got that part. But I would take Carnell Tate there. And then I'll say where we're going to go, what they'll do with their second 10-round pick. Second pick in the first round.
Yeah. See, the thing is you answered exactly what I was going to say is, and then 3-4, if you pair him up with Edmonds, now you've got a dynamic inside linebacker duo. And let's face it, with Dexter Lawrence leaving a big hole in the middle of that defense, you're going to need some guys who can help solve the middle of that defense. You put him there next to Edmonds, that's going to really help solidify the middle, which, let's face it, that's where they got carved up the most last year, was the middle of the defense. And Dexter Lawrence had a down year, but more than that, they just needed help at that second level. So if Styles is there, he would be the no-brainer for me. Like I said, because he's just so much. I have a much, much higher grade on him than any of these players we're mentioning. And Carnell Tate, it makes sense, but I'm not taking him ahead of Mekhi Lemon, and I'm definitely not taking him at 5 there. At number 6, the Cleveland Browns is interesting because this team, offensive line and wide receiver, are really the positions that just really stand out. And they've got 2 first-round picks. They've got this pick and then a pick later in the first. I think if you don't take an offensive lineman here, though, there is a legit chance that you don't have a good option to pick from with your second first-round pick. There's a very good chance. So I think you almost are forced into offensive line here because, and look, and quite frankly, I think it's more important to get your offensive line right over a wide receiver anyway. If there was a Calvin Johnson in this draft, if there was a Larry Fitzgerald in this draft, I would be a little more open to like, okay, Giants pull the trigger at 5 with a wide receiver. Maybe the Browns pull the trigger at wide receiver here. If you had some elite prospects, hell, if you had a Malik Neighbors in this draft or a Marvin Harrison Jr., who I know has been disappointing, but I'm talking about from a prospect standpoint. If you had a guy like that senior, yeah, I could get on board with it. But none of these wide receivers, none of these guys I have a high enough grade on to justify taking in the top 10. So for me, I'm passing on wide receiver here. Plus, there's a lot of depth at wide receiver in this class. There's going to be some pretty good options at wide receiver. If they want to go wide receiver with their second first round pick, you're going to have some pretty good players on the board there. Heck, even if you want to go wide receiver in the second, third round, there's going to be some good players. There's definitely not going to be any tackles. So I think it kind of forces their hand here. I think you have to go offensive line here. Pick the guy who's highest on your board and go with it.
Yeah,
So
no complaints. I completely
yeah.
agree. Yeah, I'm going offensive line.
So
Whichever
for
one, Myoga or Fano, whoever's left between whoever I said they didn't take earlier when I was talking about the Titans, take them. They should.
yeah, for me, I'm going Monroe Freeling. He's my highest graded
Oh, whoa.
tackle.
I want to
Yeah,
do that.
I'm
Go
going.
ahead.
I'm going. Well, I'm going Monroe Freeling for this reason because he's one of the only players in this draft that I think actually projects to be a true left tackle. I'm not sure that Fano can handle that position at the next level. I'm not sure Francis Maui can handle that position. There's a good chance those guys end up as guards, and then you're stuck with kind of a wasted pick. I think the Browns, they know they're not going anywhere this year. I think they're going to show some patience knowing that this pick isn't about 26. This pick is about 27 and going forward. So go get your tackle. Let him develop. Let him take his lumps. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but I think you're making this pick for the next 5-10 years, not for this year. So I'm okay taking the guy with the big upside in Monroe Freeling, letting him develop. That's fine, and worrying about going and getting your quarterback next season. All right, so let's move on. Washington Commanders. I wrote down their biggest needs are edge, offensive tackle. They could use another wide receiver, linebacker. This team's got a lot of different directions they can go. Where should the Commanders go with this pick?
I would take Sonny Styles here. I know they signed Leo Chanel and they're going to try and move him to the middle linebacker. I'm going to grab Sonny Styles here and put him in the middle of the defense. And I know they have a new defensive coordinator, so they're going to be playing a little bit of the 3-4 or a hybrid of the 3-4. I'm going to grab Sonny Styles here.
Yeah, if Sonny Styles is on the board, it's no-brainer. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I don't think he'll be here, but he might. He might. And if he is, I think you just run the card to the podium because, look, they need to fill that position. They need a big-time playmaker in the middle of this defense. He's a guy who can be a little bit of an eraser, and he's going to help the passing defense. He's going to help your run defense. He's going to be a green dot guy. He's going to be a guy that is going to be a 10 to 12-year Pro Bowl, all-pro level guy. He's just as good as they get in this draft. So, yeah, if he's available, I think he's a no-doubt pick. If he's not available, I don't think there's a tackle that warrants this pick. I don't think there's a wide receiver that warrants this pick. So I'm probably avoiding receiver and tackle, even though those are needs. I don't think there's an edge rusher that's probably worthy of this pick, unless, and it's possible, if somehow David Bailey slides, which I have seen some people think that he could. If David Bailey is somehow available here and this draft goes a little unexpected, I could get on board with that. I think you do need to go defense, though. I know they want to get another wide receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin. I know you want to get Jaden Daniels another weapon. You can wait to do that. You know, I'm going to stick with that narrative. You can wait to do that. You don't need to take one here. I think there's other positions of need. What about the Saints? Another interesting pick here. This roster is aging. They could use a disruptive pass rusher. Cam Jordan's getting towards the end of his career. Tyler Shuck came on, really played some good ball at the quarterback position. You have Chris Olave, but not much else after him. So, you know, wide receiver does make sense. Do you pull the trigger this early? Maybe. But D tackle is another position they need. But once again, there's not a guy good enough to warrant taking at this pick. So what direction do you go with the Saints?
With the Saints, actually go Lemon here. My wide receiver room is Chris Olave and then a bunch of guys. I'm not even second or third guys. Like these are fourth, fifth, and sixth guys. I would take Lemon. Again, they could trade, but I'm not getting into the whole trade thing.
To your point, this would be a spot where maybe you could trade back a little bit. If you've got the right dance partner, maybe move back a couple of picks, add another pick or two in this draft. Wouldn't be a bad spot because wide receiver probably is the move here. And this is kind of the earliest that I could justify taking a receiver because, you know, once again, if I'm looking at my big board, I've got Mekhi Lemon as my 10th best player. This is pick 9 in the draft. So this is kind of the range where I start to feel a little better about wide receiver. A top 5 is a little rich for me, but once you kind of get into this range, I could start justifying it. So Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, I have ranked just barely below him. So whoever you like better there, I think does make a lot of sense. Give your quarterback another weapon. See what this guy can do with some more weapons and start to build around him and your offensive coach. Chiefs at 9. Oh, so that was the 8th pick. Sorry. So Saints at 8. Chiefs at 9.
Right. Yeah. So I can say this confidently with the Chiefs. Losing both of those DBs has put them in a space of necessity. Now they do need another tackle now that Jawan Taylor has moved on, and I think they got a guy that's only started like maybe 5 games, and Jalen Moore. I think he's only started 5 or 6 games for the most part. Here, I'm thinking about tackle, but the top 2 guys, from my perspective, the way I did my draft, those 2 guys are gone. So here, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take Mansour Delane to make up for what I lost in our free agency and the trade as well.
Yeah, you trade away Trent McDuffie, all pro corner. That is a big loss. Look, what's interesting about the Chiefs, this Chiefs team, I think a lot of people think the Chiefs are just going to magically bounce back and be contenders again. I don't think so. I think this team has a lot more holes than people realize. This secondary got gutted. And you're right. This secondary has a lot of holes all of a sudden. They've got needs at the edge. They've got needs at defensive tackle. Chris Jones isn't getting any younger. They've got serious holes at the offensive tackle position, which, look, those positions have been a weakness for the last couple years now. Kelsey is on his last leg. Their wide receiver room is just kind of a bunch of guys and a bunch of picks that, for the most part, Xavier Worthy, sorry, I told you guys, he's a gadget guy. Tried telling everybody that. He's not a legit wide receiver. They've got holes, man. Like, they need weapons. They need to protect Mahomes coming back. They need defenders. They could go in so many directions. At this point in the draft, look, I'm going to go back to the big board here. I've got these corners at 18 and 21 on the big board. So, and I like these corners. I just don't know if I trust taking one that high. This is a tough spot to be in because at this point, I'd probably go tackle. And I don't love the tackles that are available at this point, but I think it's probably one of the most glaring holes on this team. And like we talked about a minute ago with the Browns, the run on tackle is going to start early, and these guys are going to go off the board, and you're not going to have a chance to get one after this pick if you're the Chiefs. So I think you almost have to go with a guy. If Spencer Fano is on the board, I think he's probably your best option. You've got Mahomes coming off of a major injury, a guy who's been scrambling around for his life the last couple seasons. They've got to fix that protection up front, especially now that, look, Mahomes is officially on the back nine, right? He's 30 years old. He's officially entered the second half of his career off of a major injury. But I don't hate the idea of corner. It just might be a little early to pull the trigger on one. So the Giants sneak into the top 10 for the second time with that Dexter Lawrence trade. 2 top 10 picks, man. They've got a legit chance here to really get some impact players here in this draft and really kind of kickstart this Harbaugh era in New York. Where should the Giants go here at 10?
So this is where I picked Ione for the Giants in their and to help revamp that line. I picked Ione here at number 10 for them to go and get.
Yeah, you know what? It's early for a guard. It's definitely early for a guard. However, once again, he's one of the best players in this draft, period. I mean, just period. I have him as the 5th best player on my board. Look, you're absolutely right. I wrote down their biggest needs. I think they absolutely need help at linebacker. They need help at corner, and they need help on the interior of that offensive line. I think at this point, why not just go get probably, you can make a case, maybe the safest prospect in this draft? I mean, even the best players have some question marks. What's the question mark around this guy? He is elite pass protection. He's a physical mauler in the run game. He's got the most consistent tape of probably any player in this draft. It just doesn't matter what tape you throw on, game in and game out. This guy just plays like one of the best players on the field, no matter who he's playing against. I don't hate that pick, man. They're not going to do it, I'm sure. But look, this is about what they should do, not what they're going to do, right? So that was the whole point of this exercise. I don't hate it, man. I don't hate it at all.
I was trying to look at my draft and see what could, just to mention Dallas, to see what they could draft. But I'm coming up with Kenyon Sadiq. It's going to be Dylan Thieneman at the end of the day again. I mean, we talked about it earlier today, but it's going to be Dylan Thieneman.
Yeah, because I think Mansour Delane would make sense if he's there.
Right.
I don't know if he'll be there. I don't think Caleb Downs will be there. I think it comes oddly. It probably comes down to 2 Oregon guys. Do you want and Sadiq but I don't think you go offense. I just don't think.
Yeah, I can't
if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'd be pulling my hair out if they go with an offensive pick here. That defense just needs so much help, and they need a lot of help in the secondary, especially. And when a guy like Thieneman who has so much range and so much versatility, he can really be an eraser on the back end of the defense. He can come up and make plays in the running game. He can help out in the passing game. He's just such a Swiss Army knife player. I think if I'm the Cowboys, it's too much to ignore. You're too excited to have that kind of player that can be an impact player in the secondary. So I think to sneak the Cowboys into this top 10 because they're the Cowboys and they'll find a way to sneak into this conversation, I think that's what they got to do, Alex.
Yeah, I would go Thieneman. Yep,
I'm with you. That is going to do it for this one. Top 10 picks, what we think each team should do. Now it's your turn, guys. Let us know where we nailed it, where we're completely off. Make sure you hit that like button, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss out on our next episodes. And don't forget, guys, subscribe to the free newsletter for exclusive content. Sign up at pintglassfootball.com. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.